Okay, this is my video of the bones of the appendicular skeleton, the upper extremities. So first we're going to start with the clavicle, also known as the collarbone right here. It's an S shape, which is would be different than a rib, which is going to be a C shape. And ribs are flatter than this. So the two things you need to know are the ends on this. So we have the sternal end, which articulates with the sternum, and the acromial end, which articulates with the acromion. So the way that you can tell them apart is, of course, the shape of them. So the sternal end from the side, you can see it's flat. I call it flat like that. And then on the, this is the acromial end. The acromial end is flat because it is articulating with this flat acromial process right here. They're both equally flat or thinner. And then the sternal end, if you look at it, has a kind of a round flat surface right there. Okay, so that's the clavicle, which then brings up our scapula. So here's the scapula. Okay. This is the spine of the scapula, so the ledge you can grab and hold is the spine. And then it ends up in the acromion right here, which is what this, clavicle articulates with. So our articulation is where two bones meet and form a joint. So spine, acromion, and then as we flip this way, this is the glenoid fossa. It might say cavity on your paper, but I'll say fossa. This is where the humerus articulates. You can see right there. Okay. And then we flip it around to the what would be the anterior surface, and we have another little projection, and this is the coracoid process. Okay. And so the acromion process is on the end of the spine. The coracoid process is not on the end of the spine. And then right next to it is this notch right here, and that is your suprascapular notch. And that is what you need to know for the scapula. So spine, acromion, glenoid fossa, coracoid process, suprascapular notch. That brings us to the humerus. Okay, so you can recognize the humerus. The humerus and the femur are the only bones that have this rounded head. But hopefully on the femur bone, it's much larger, and the bone itself is bigger, and the head is way more pronounced. And then on the humerus, this where the head attaches to the rest of the bone, this is called the surgical head, the anatomical head, because that is truly the anatomical head. But then around here is known as a surgical head, because that's when the humerus breaks, it tends to break here and not up here. So they call that the surgical head. Okay, so roughened spots are always going to be for muscle attachments. So tubercles, tuberosities, and trochanters, the T words for muscle attachments. And on the humerus, we have a greater and lesser tubercle. Okay, and they're divided by this intertubercular groove. Okay, so the greater tubercle is greater because it takes up a bigger surface area. Okay, so this is the greater tubercle, and then the lesser tubercle sticks out more. Okay, it's smaller, but it kind of sticks out. So people want to call this the greater one because it pokes out more, but it's a smaller surface area. So this is the lesser tubercle, this is the bigger, greater tubercle. And then we can actually compare them to the end right here. But if you go down between the intertubercular groove into this roughened area, then this is where you hit the deltoid tuberosity. This is where your deltoid muscle attaches to lift your arm up. So greater tubercle, lesser tubercle, go through this groove, and then you get the deltoid tuberosity. So that's at the proximal end. At the distal end, this is what forms the elbow joint. Okay. So if you hold your elbow straight out from your arm, the inside of your elbow up, This is the way it would go. And you feel down your elbow, you'll feel this pointy part on your elbow. Okay, this is the part sticking out. But it should be on your list, but it's not. This is called the medial epicondyle. Okay, so that can be a landmark. It's on the same side as the head because the head has to face medial. Okay, so this makes this the anterior surface of the bone. Okay, and then this also right next to this big area, when you have held the bone up, this is your greater tubercle, whereas your lesser tubercle is going to be on the posterior surface. Okay, so if I switch this around, so this is medial epicondyle, it sticks out. We're still on the anterior surface of the bone. You see this little indentation here. This little indentation is called the coronoid fossa. And if we rotate it around to this other side where my thumb's sticking, oh, shoot, I did this whole thing wrong. Okay, I'm not starting all over. I had the wrong, I was doing the wrong arm. This is not the right arm. This is the left arm. This is the medial epicondyle facing medial. And then we switch it around. And this smaller indentation is the coronoid fossa. Okay. And then on the back is the olecranon fossa. So you should be able to see the coronoid fossa, or the olecranon fossa is much deeper and bigger than the coronoid fossa is smaller. Okay, and then the other thing you see on this anterior surface, this right here is called the trochlea. And if you put your finger and your thumb in these two fossas, the trochlea is where it rotates around. So this is where your ulna attaches, and this is forming your elbow joint. And so it rotates in and out. This is going to rotate in and out of the these fossas. Do you see right here? Okay, so this is the trochlea, and the ulna articulates with the trochlea. And then also on the surface is the capitulum, okay, which is where the radius is going to articulate right here. Wrong end. So this is where the radius articulates right here, is on the capitulum. And this is going to be opposite the epicondyle. So remember, the epicondyle is the pointy part. So the radius, when you are in anatomical position, thumb side out, the radius is on the thumb side, so it's on the lateral side, and the ulna is on the medial side. Okay, and then they rotate. So the ulna rotates with the trochlea, and the radius articulates with the capitulum. Now, on the posterior side, you can still see this trochlea, but you cannot see the capitulum anymore, okay, because the capitulum's right here, and you can't see it sticking out. So, for the humerus, we have the greater tubercle, the lesser tubercle, the deltoid tuberosity, the coronoid fossa, the trochlea, the capitulum, and the olecranon fossa. And that brings us to our ulna, which we can recognize because the ulna has a U shape, so it's telling you U for ulna. And this is the proximal end, and here's the distal end. So the ulna starts out proximal end big and gets smaller on the distal end, and it's the opposite for the radius. So on this U shape, this top one, this is the olecranon process. It's what fits into the olecranon fossa. Okay, so the process fits into the fossa. And then this is the trochlear notch that the trochlea sits in, and then this is the coronoid process that is going to articulate in the coronoid fossa. That is how they fit together. And then on the other end, there's a little point right here, and this is called the styloid process. And it's the styloid process of the ulna, because we also have a styloid process of the temporal bone, and we have a styloid process of the radius. So, olecranon process, trochlear notch, coronoid process, and styloid process. And then the radius, much easier to look at. So the radius starts out small. The tabletop, the small tabletop, is the proximal end, and then this is the distal end. Okay. Right next to the radius is this radial tuberosity, this bump for muscle attachment. And then on the other end, if you hold it up, you have another styloid process right here, a pointy part that sticks out the bottom. So this is a styloid process of the radius. All right, so that takes care of everything but the hand. So the hand can be a little overwhelming. You have 8 carpal bones, and you do have to know the names of all these carpal bones. So they're listed. I have a mnemonic device to help you remember it. There's 2. There's an R-rated version, and there's a PG-rated version. The PG version is she looks too pretty, try to catch her. So the beginning letter of each of the words in the sentence is the beginning letter of each of the bones. And then for the R-rated version, it's some lovers try positions that they can't handle. And please note, I did not make either of these up. I'm just passing them on. So how this helps you is that the carpal, the wrist bones, you have 2 rows of 4 bones. You have the proximal row, which is going to articulate with the ulna and the radius, and you have the distal row, which articulates with the metacarpals. Okay, so the proximal row, you have bone 1, 2, 3, and then this one hangs off the end right here. That's 4th. And then on the distal row, bone 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so some lovers try positions, the first 4 words: scaphoid, lunate, triquetral, pisiform. It's the hanging off one. Scaphoid, lunate, triquetral, pisiform. Okay, that's the proximal row. And then the distal row that they can't handle. So first you have trapezium, trapezoid, capitate, hamate. Okay, so trapezium is on the thumb, so the UN helps you with that. Trapezium, trapezoid, capitate, anything with cap, it's big, it's one of the biggest bones like a head, and then hamate, and if you flip the hamate over, it has a little hook on it. That's the hamate hook, the hammy hook. So the bone that has the hook on it is the hamate. So you can feel that sticking out, you know, on your pinky side. Okay, so some lovers try positions that they can't handle. Scaphoid, lunate, triquetral, pisiform, trapezium, trapezoid, capitate, hamate. Now on to the metacarpals, starting on the thumb side: metacarpal 1, metacarpal 2, metacarpal 3, metacarpal 4, metacarpal 5. Okay. And then to the fingers. So it really takes a group of words. You have to reference the bones in the finger in relation to which metacarpal they're attached to. So that's the the way that we do it. And then the 4 fingers have 3 bones. So you have a proximal, middle, and distal. So proximal, middle, distal. Now the thumb only has a proximal and a distal bone. So how you would reference it is first you use proximal, middle, or distal. In real life you'd use left or right, but we only have right hands, or left hands, right hands, so they're only going to be right. But you would say, like if I was referencing this end of my thumb, that would be the right distal phalange of metacarpal 1. Okay, this would be the right proximal phalange of metacarpal 1. Here we go here. This is the right proximal phalange of metacarpal 2. This is the right middle phalange of metacarpal 2. This is the right distal phalange of metacarpal 2. So here's our right proximal phalange of metacarpal 3, our right middle phalange of metacarpal 3, and our right distal phalange of metacarpal 3. our right proximal phalange of metacarpal 4, our right proximal phalange of our right middle phalange of metacarpal 4, and our right distal phalange of metacarpal 4. Becomes a lot to say them repeatedly. Right proximal phalange of metacarpal 5, right middle phalange of metacarpal 5, and right distal phalange of metacarpal 5. Okay, and then the bones on the left hand would be named for the left hand. So that summarizes the upper extremities of the appendicular skeleton.